Thanks, Jen. Hi, everyone. My name is Sid Nigam. I'm a class of 2016 grad, currently serving on the UNH Alumni Association Board of Directors. I serve as the co-chair of the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee. The UNH Alumni Association serves as the bedrock of our UNH alumni community. We work to connect alumni to each other and to UNH. So thank you all for supporting UNH with your time today. We encourage you to take advantage of our Wildcat benefits by visiting the website at unh.edu/alumni. Tonight's webinar, I'm so excited for it. It's called Letting Go of the Diet Mentality, Intuitive Eating. It's another episode in the webinar series presented by UNH Alumni Relations. I'm personally really excited for this talk and discussion because I run a food Instagram page called Always in a Curry. That's separated by dots. So it's at always.in.a.curry, where I post about cooking food and trying out new restaurants, and it's mostly around Indian food. So definitely check that out. But tonight's moderator is Laila Hammam. Laila is a 2006 graduate of the College of Life Sciences and Agriculture, and currently a registered dietitian for UNH's Health and Wellness Program. Prior to this, she owned a private practice in Greece, providing patients with evidence-based nutrition advice and personalized diets for weight management, medical nutrition therapy, sports nutrition, childhood nutrition, and eating disorders. She also served in dietitian roles at King's College Hospital, NHS Foundation Trust, and Aston Pride Community Healthcare Center. While a student at UNH, she was a nutrition peer educator. She ran a program for adult weight loss and was a teaching assistant for a writing intensive nutrition class. Laila has a diploma in sports nutrition from the International Olympic Committee and a MS in nutrition from King's College in London. Our expert panelists will also answer questions at the end of the webinar, so please note any questions that you may have in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. And with that, I'll turn it over to Laila.
Great, thank you very much, Sid, for that introduction. And welcome to all of you who have been joining us today. I'm very excited to be here and talk about intuitive eating. It's something that some of you may have heard of and may be completely new to others, but I hope that you all walk away with something today. So let's get started. All right, so today we're going to look at diet culture, kind of touch upon what that really means, what it looks like, and then look at the non-diet approach, also something known as HAES, health at every size. Then we'll jump into what is intuitive eating and go into more depth of the 10 principles that it's made of. And then to wrap up, we have a little, activity or just a reflection that you all can do. And then we will definitely leave time for questions. So please make sure that you get your questions in as they come up. Some of the questions may be answered kind of throughout the presentation, but in case I don't get to them, then I will definitely answer them at the end. All right, so how many of us have seen these types of images? So we're constantly reminded that we need to look a certain way, we need to lose weight, especially for women after, childbirth, jumping back to that pre-baby weight, losing 10 pounds in 10 days. Here we've got somebody who had a divorce and how they lost 30 pounds and got their life back. Looking at losing 70 pounds by drinking a detox tea. And for men, then it's a lot of times, in terms of that muscular body form, where they need to have that six-pack, losing the gut. So whether we want to engage in these types of messages or not, we are constantly seeing them. So we almost don't have a choice. It's there in front of us. So what is diet culture? Well, we live in a diet that worships thinness, where somehow, being thinner, losing weight, there's a higher status. We demonize food. We categorize food as good and bad, healthy, unhealthy. And it can be really stigmatizing to people in larger bodies. So there's a lot of weight stigma around as well. And if you think about New Year's resolutions, it's not a coincidence that pretty much every year, the top New Year's resolution has something about changing the way we look, changing our appearance, whether it's losing weight, whether it's changing how we're eating, whether it's going to the gym more, they are always at the top. Some of you may have made one as well at some point in your lives. Fad diets. We have diets that are constantly coming up and often without any kind of scientific evidence to them. There's this concept of yo-yo dieting as well, where we may try one diet, feel that, maybe it worked temporarily or maybe it didn't work at all. And then we want to try something else in order to reach our goal of weight loss or looking a certain way. Also, if you think about the, society has taught us that we have to look a certain way, as we saw in those previous magazine covers. And if we think about those appearance ideals, those change constantly. So again, what is, the ideal today is not necessarily what it was 20, 30, 50 years ago. And so we're always trying to keep up and catch up and trying to fit that mold of what we're being told we need to look like. Now with the use of technology and smartphones, we have a lot more fitness apps as well. So we can track what we're eating. We can know exactly how much we're consuming, our macronutrients, micronutrients. We know about like our exercise patterns, how much we're, moving, how many steps we're taking. And influencers. So that's another big one that's recently, become more popular, is that social media has a lot of influencers that like to talk about diet, exercise, and with no background oftentimes in any nutrition or exercise science. And so this is where I definitely, would like to highlight that be cautious of what you are viewing. Make sure that they are coming from reputable sources and it's not just someone who's trying to sell you a product to lose weight or to look younger or whatever it may be. So looking at the image on the right, at the examples of diet culture, I'd like you to just kind of take a few moments to look through some of these if you haven't already, and try to see which ones of these that you may have experienced at some point in your life. Maybe it's something that you're experiencing right now. Maybe it's something that you've experienced growing up. And one of the things I want to note about these examples is that with diet culture, a lot of these behaviors have become so normalized that we might not even notice that they could be problematic. So when we're complimenting, for example, somebody's weight loss, we might think, well, what's wrong with that? They lost weight, they look great. But what is that saying to that person? What is that saying to them about how they looked before? What is that saying about how we feel about weight? So just some things to think about. So moving on to fad diets. So what exactly are fad diets? So fad diets are those diets that we saw on those magazine covers that promise that rapid weight loss. So we're losing that 10 pounds in 10 days. We're losing 70 pounds by drinking tea. These are things that almost seem unreal. And so you can see some of the examples of some fad diets, and you may have heard of some of these. So there's the paleo, the ketogenic or keto diet, the Dukan diet, Atkins Whole30, and there are so many more. And I feel like it's almost hard to keep up because there's always something being created. What is the problem with fad diets? Well, the problem is, and the biggest problem is that with fad diets, we're often eliminating specific foods or entire food groups altogether. So if we're looking at the ketogenic keto diet, this is a high-fat, high-protein diet, similar to the Atkins diet, where there's very limited carbohydrates being consumed. So what's the problem with that? We're not getting those carbohydrates. We're not getting the glucose from that breakdown that our body needs to function optimally. And we may also be losing out on a lot of fiber and a lot of other nutrients that we would get from carbohydrates. If we're not able to eat any kind of fruits or vegetables or very limited types, we're also missing out on those vitamins and minerals that we get from those foods. So it can be very dangerous to, start any of these fad diets because you're missing out on a lot of things at times. They are not sustainable. So yes, they may cause rapid weight loss. However, they're not sustainable because of the reason of eliminating these specific foods or food groups. And so, if you like desserts, if you like sweets, and these diets don't allow that, well, that's probably not something that you're going to be able to keep doing forever. At some point, you're going to want to have those desserts, as we should be having, and there's nothing wrong with that. And so then they're not sustainable. They're not healthy. Again, going back to the reason of eliminating specific food groups and not, getting all the nutrients that we need. And then weight gain. So you may be wondering, why is weight gain on there when we're talking about fad diets? Well, dieters tend to regain the weight that they've lost back. And some dieters may even gain more than what they initially lost. Because once we start eating normally again, it's where our body is meant to be. So weight gain is actually the number one, in a sense, side effect of dieting. So what are some of the psychological effects of dieting? So dieting, or any kind of restriction, creates the urge to binge. So if you've ever been on a diet and you feel that you have sometimes felt out of control when eating or eating certain foods, there's no surprise there, because when we are restricting ourselves, we want that food more. And so once we have it, we tend to binge, where we're eating more than what we would want to initially have, and usually a lot faster than we normally would eat. It leads to an obsession and preoccupation with food. So soon food is all that we're thinking about. We want to eat it all the time, but we're restricting ourselves, so we're not doing that. It can lead to anxiety and depression, and also social isolation. So the social isolation piece can come in terms of if you're on a diet. So again, if I'm on a keto diet and I'm not having any carbohydrates, but I've been invited to a holiday party, well, there can be that fear of not having anything available at that party that I can now eat on my diet. And so then tending to isolate and not go to certain functions and things that you normally would. If anybody has ever skipped a meal or, not eaten enough or whatever it may be, you may have noticed starting to feel a little fatigued or irritable, also known as being hangry. You may notice if you're working or if you're in a class or whatever you might be doing that you're not able to focus very well. Your concentration is decreasing. And again, starting to kind of have a little bit of those mood swings. Well, then when the diet is not sustainable and we stop being on the diet, we feel like we've failed at something. And there's this feeling of shame and guilt as well associated with it. And so I'm here to tell you also that you didn't fail anything. Those diets failed you, that diets do not work. And just something to think about, that if dieting did work, we wouldn't keep trying different ones. We wouldn't keep coming up with different ones. So just something to think about there. So what is the cycle of dieting? So typically dieting starts off with this feeling of I need to go on a diet by controlling what I'm eating. I need to change my body shape. I need to lose weight, whatever it may be. And then there's this thing where we're saying, okay, well, I'm going to do it by eliminating all processed foods, all sugars, whatever it may be that we want to do in that moment. And we're never going to have those foods again. Well, soon enough, we are going to start thinking about that food that we are restricting. And soon that's all we can think about. We don't want anything else to eat. We are now craving those foods and we can't stop thinking about it. And we feel out of control, that if we do end up having it, that we won't be able to control ourselves. So then oftentimes what does happen when we have that food is that we do end up binging or overeating. And we come into what we would call like the Last Supper mentality. So this is where there's that feeling of, well, I had it now, I'm never going to do it again, so I might as well just eat it all. That then leads to a feeling of guilt and shame, that we're feeling that, okay, I'm not good enough, I wasn't strong enough, I failed at this diet, so I'm going to try it again. And the cycle continues. So what is the non-diet approach? So the non-diet approach is an attuned and mindful-based eating approach. So this is one that supports self-esteem and body acceptance. And one of the main things that is a non-diet approach is the concept of health at every size. And so this is one that acknowledges that well-being and healthy habits are much more than just a number on the scale. So we're not focusing on number, we are focusing on, creating healthy habits and creating overall well-being. So the health at every size is made up of 5 principles. So it includes weight inclusivity, health enhancement, respectful care, life enhancing movement, and eating, I think it's on the slide, eating for well-being. So weight inclusivity is accepting that there are a range of diverse body shapes and sizes, so that we are not all meant to look the same. Respectful care is acknowledging any biases that we have towards weight and working to end them, working to end weight stigma, weight bias, weight discrimination. Health enhancement is improving access to information and services that impact well-being so that everyone has equal access to health enhancing behaviors and services. Life enhancing movement is supporting physical activities that are inclusive to all sizes so that everybody is able to engage in some sort of movement that feels good for their body, so that we're not all doing the same types of things because, that's what we should be doing or we feel we should be doing, but things that work for us. And then eating for well-being, this is again promoting flexible, individualized eating patterns based on your hunger and satiety cues, nutritional needs, and pleasure. And so not focusing on any specific diets. With health at every size, because we won't be going into that much more now, but there is a very good little quick YouTube video called Poodle Science that actually, summarizes this pretty nicely. So it's definitely one that I do use quite a bit when talking about health at every size. So I do recommend that if you get a chance, have a look at Poodle Science. So let's move on to intuitive eating. So what is intuitive eating? So intuitive eating was founded by 2 dietitians, Evelyn Tribole and Elyse Fresh, here on the cover of the book, in 1995. So it's not something that's new. It's been around for a while, but it's definitely something that's been, coming up more and more recently in terms of something to try to work towards and move towards. And so what it is, it's a non-diet approach to eating. So it's a personal process of honoring health by listening and responding to the direct messages of the body in order to meet your physical and psychological needs. So this is where we are putting weight loss at the back burner and that we can actually listen to our body and what it needs. When weight loss and going on a diet is our main goal, we are not able to listen to our body cues. We're focusing more on what we should and should not be eating, and we're not actually listening to if we're hungry or not. So this is their latest edition, the 4th edition of the book. And it's definitely a nice book because it goes into more detail about each of the 10 principles that make up intuitive eating. And yeah, so intuitive eating is an evidence-based, non-diet self-care framework that is weight inclusive and provides guidelines, not rules. And this is one of the biggest things that I would say is that in terms of diets, we're so used to these strict rules. So when we look at, what we should and shouldn't be eating, those are rules. Those are not guidelines. So these are just guidelines that just kind of help direct us in terms of what we, listening to our body more and kind of tuning into that. All right, so intuitive eating, as I mentioned, it's not anything new. So it's been around for a while. And to date, there have been over 125 studies done looking at the impact of intuitive eating. And these are some of the benefits that they found to intuitive eating. So people who engaged in intuitive eating, they had lower rates of emotional eating. They had lower rates of disordered eating and eating disorders. They had overall higher self-esteem and better body image, more satisfaction with life, more optimism overall and well-being, and they had proactive coping skills. So there are a lot of good benefits to intuitive eating, according to these studies, and we'll see what it means to go through intuitive eating. So intuitive eating is made up of 10 principles. And so we will go through each one and just summarizing them. So it's rejecting the diet mentality, honoring your hunger, making peace with food, challenging the food police, discovering the satisfaction factor, feeling your fullness, coping with your emotions with kindness, respecting your body, movement, and honoring your health. So let's start off with rejecting the diet mentality. So with rejecting the diet mentality, what this means is rejecting those obvious diets that we talked about, those fad diets that are all over, the internet, all over social media. So really not going for those. But it's also a matter of avoiding the pseudo diets and rejecting those. So what are pseudo diets? So these are some of those things that we talked about, or looked at when talking about diet culture, that some of these behaviors that we may feel like have become a little bit normalized because a lot of people are doing it, but they may also be rather problematic. So this can include meticulously counting carbohydrates or any kind of intake, using, apps that can track all of your calorie intake and things like that. Only allowing yourself to eat safe foods. So things that you feel more comfortable with, things that you don't feel like are necessarily bad foods. Only allowing yourself to eat certain times of the day. So even if you're hungry in the evening, having a cutoff point that I can't eat after this. Punishing yourself over eating bad foods. So whether it's putting yourself down after eating something that you deem bad, or also then maybe feeling the need that you have to work it off and go to the gym, or maybe it's not eating enough the next meal or day because of what you did previously. It may be cutting back on foods in general, so not eating for what your body actually needs. And it may also be pacifying hunger through caffeine and other liquids. So this is where we're trying to fill ourselves up and, confuse the body, trick the body that we are full and we don't need to eat by filling up on liquids instead. There may be judgment on what you deserve to eat. And so we really want to try to avoid that. There should be no judgment. Food does not hold a moral value, and you should be allowed and allow yourself to eat all types of foods. And then there's this inflexibility with foods and exercise. So again, feeling maybe that you're only allowed to eat certain things, certain times, and the amount of exercise that you have to do. So it's having very rigid rules that we want to, again, try to avoid. So honoring your hunger. So this is where we really want to try to recognize hunger as a normal, natural, physiological cue. I want you for a moment to think about when your bladder is full and stretched, what do? We go pee. We don't often think about when the last time we went to the bathroom was. We don't often think of it in the sense that, well, I went half an hour ago, I shouldn't feel the need to go now. So why do we do that with food? When we are getting this physiological cue of hunger, this means that our body needs more fuel. It needs more energy, and we should be eating. So hunger might be silenced. Again, we might try to ignore those cues. We might try to confuse those cues by, again, as I mentioned earlier, drinking more fluids or, trying to do something. Heard lots of interesting things, chewing on a straw, chewing gum, and if you're hungry and it's time to eat. Dieting or starvation or any kind of restricting, it increases the desire for carbohydrates. So a lot of times when people are dieting, they might feel that, oh my gosh, all I want is carbs, and why is this happening? It's because our body needs that energy. And so the carbohydrates are broken down into glucose, and that's what's used by the body. So it definitely wants those carbohydrates. As I mentioned earlier, that dieting creates the urge to binge. So this is where the staying hungry for too long will lead to overeating. So it's important to know that, that you're not going too long in between meals, maybe having some snacks to kind of hold you over in between to your next meal, but not going too hungry. And it's also important to let your body know that it can eat when it's hungry. So if you are hungry, if it's not mealtime, having a little snack in between to help. So one of the things you can do is to kind of reflect. Am I hungry? If you start to get cues of some sort, is this hunger? What's going on? And then we want to look at what's my hunger level? How hungry am I feeling? And we'll look at that a little bit more detail next. But most importantly, what are my hunger signs? So a lot of times I'll hear people talking about like, well, my stomach's not growling, I'm not hungry. Well, yes, that may be a cue to eat, but that may not be the only cue that's showing up. So a lot of times we may feel, a little bit lightheaded. Maybe it's time to eat. Maybe you have a little bit of a headache. Maybe you start thinking about food more, or losing concentration, not able to focus. Maybe you're getting irritable. So trying to identify what those hunger signs are. And again, when we are dieting and we are not paying attention to those hunger signs, because regardless of if they're happening or not, if that's not in our meal plan or what we're supposed to be doing on the diet, then we're not going to listen to them. We're not going to do anything about it. So this can be really challenging and really difficult to kind of try to identify them if we haven't been paying attention to them before. So what we use is the hunger and satiety scale. So this is where we can actually assess how we're feeling. So if 5 is neutral, we're not hungry, we're not full, we are just fine. And then moving down to 4, we might start feeling a little bit empty that, yeah, I could eat something, but I don't feel like having a full meal. I could have a small snack. Going to 3, that's where we're having more of an empty stomach. And this is where we could definitely eat a meal. If we move towards 2, this probably means that we have had too long of a gap between meals or whatever we're eating, and we start to feel a little more uncomfortable with our hunger. And this is where the hanger shows up as well. So if you start to become a little bit irritable, just, wanting something immediately, this is where you might be. And then 1 is definitely not where we want to go. This is where we're extremely hungry and we might start feeling dizzy or faint and start to feel nauseous as well. So right now, because I know this is kind of around lunchtime, so have a think about where you're at right now. So some of you may have had something to eat before, joining. Some of you may be eating right now. Some of you may be waiting until afterwards. So kind of seeing where you're at in terms of your hunger levels at this very moment. Are you able to recognize something in there, what you're feeling? So there are 4 types of physical hunger. 4 types of hunger, excuse me. So there's physical hunger, taste hunger, emotional hunger, and practical hunger. So physical hunger are those physiological signs and cues that we are hungry, that our body needs more energy from food. And this is very normal. This is the most common type of hunger that we experience. The only way to get rid of physical hunger is by actually eating. So this is where we feel hunger, we eat, and it goes away. Then there's taste hunger. So taste hunger might be in the sense of where something sounds good or there's a special occasion and we want to eat something that's available, but we're not actually hungry. So an example of this might be that if you've gone to eat at a restaurant and you've had your meal and you feel satisfied, you're not uncomfortable, but you're good, you don't want any more food. Then they show up with the dessert menu and boy, do they sound good. And so this is where you're like, yes, I would actually really like some dessert. And that's fine. So you're eating something because it sounds good and it will be good. And that's okay to do as well. Emotional hunger is where we have a desire to eat that's attached to some sort of intense emotion. And so we want to try to reflect that what feelings are we trying to suppress here? What's going on? And it may often be difficult to distinguish whether or not something is emotional hunger or another type of hunger. But one of the things that happens with emotional hunger is that it often comes quickly after experiencing an intense emotion. So that's maybe one way to identify what's going on. And it is okay to eat when we are feeling emotional, but as we'll talk about later, we don't want it to be the only coping mechanism to those emotions. And then there's practical hunger, which is not exactly hunger per se, but it's this feeling of the need to eat in response to anticipated hunger. So maybe you're in a setting, if we were doing this live, maybe you wouldn't feel comfortable eating, in during the presentation. And so you ate a little bit earlier because you knew you wouldn't be able to eat at this time. Or you're taking a flight and you want to make sure that you get something to eat beforehand. So you eat in response to that anticipated hunger that might come later. So that's okay to do as well. All right, so moving on to making peace with food. So here we definitely want to try to call a truce with food and giving yourself unconditional permission to eat anything you want. We really want to try to avoid that Last Supper mentality where we were saying that, oh, I'm never going to have this again, so I might as well eat it all now. And we want to try to address food fears and rebuild body trust. We want to eliminate food labels. So not labeling foods as good or bad, healthy or unhealthy. As I mentioned earlier, food has no moral value and should not hold a moral value. One interesting thing too to note is that when we eat, our body is not making that distinction of if this is a good or bad food. That is all our mind. So when we eat something, even if we're eating this cupcake here, our body is not thinking, oh, it's a cupcake, it's a treat. It's not labeling it in any way. All it is thinking when it's being processed and digested is that, okay, I have a carbohydrate coming in and I have a fat source coming in. So it's not that our body can't do anything with it, or it's, we're not getting any nutrients out of it. We are. And so that's also something to kind of keep in mind and remember. So eating what you really want. And so a lot of people have a hard time with this one because they feel that, well, if I eat what I really want, I'm just going to only eat that food. Well, chances are you're not. And the chances are you feel out of control with that food is because you haven't been allowing yourself to have it freely. So if it's something like, let's say, Oreos, that if you haven't been having Oreos or buying them in the house, then yeah, maybe you do feel uncomfortable about it because it's not something that you're allowing yourself to have. Maybe you have a label on it that it's not good for you, that it's unhealthy. And so in the beginning, when you start to reintroduce it, you might feel a little out of control or eat more than you wanted to. But it's a matter of having them available and telling yourself that I don't need to eat them all, because if I want more, I can have more tomorrow or next week or, whenever it is that you want them. And then eating without feeling the need to compensate. So we shouldn't have to punish ourselves. If we had Thanksgiving dinner and we ate more than we normally do, that's fine. We don't need to go for a walk to walk it off. We don't need to go for a run later. We don't need to not eat the next meal. It is absolutely okay. So challenging the food police. So this is about challenging both the collective and inner food police. So it may be challenging, maybe some of these food beliefs have come from family, from your, maybe it's cultural, maybe it's your peers who have talked about certain things about food and what we should and should not be eating. And it's about challenging these internal thoughts. Giving yourself emotional permission to eat all foods, and reframing false beliefs and negative self-talk. So if you do notice yourself having some beliefs around certain foods, or giving yourself negative self-talk when eating a food, saying, oh, I'm so bad, I shouldn't have done that, whatever it may be, try to reframe those. So we don't want to, again, when we're thinking about negative thoughts and talking negatively about ourselves, oftentimes this doesn't just end with one thing. So we do it more and it tends to spiral. So before it gets to that point, we really want to try to allow ourselves to reframe those thoughts and try to think of a different way to approach it. So when challenging the food police, try to think about, what food rules do you have? So what is it about food that you feel, how do you feel about food? And where do these come from? Is it family? Is it peers? Is it your spouse? How are these related to your body? And how do you feel when you break one of these food rules? So discovering the satisfaction factor. So food is more than just about the nutrients that we're getting from it. It's also about the social connection that's around food. So a lot of, especially around the holidays, there's that connection with other people. So try to think about, what do you really want to eat? And try to pay attention to the different flavors or textures, aromas, appearance, temperature, what's going on with that food? What are you eating and what are you noticing? You want to try to make your eating experience more enjoyable. So this is best when we're eating when we feel that gentle hunger, that we're not going into the meal feeling extremely hungry, but we're comfortably hungry and ready to eat. This will also help us slow down when we reach that gentle hunger and going into a meal, because when we're extremely hungry, we tend to eat a lot faster. Ideally, we're eating in a pleasant environment that we can enjoy the food more. We don't want to have any tension. And also we want to think about variety. So we don't want to just have, something that's not appealing. We want to be enjoying our foods. Don't settle. So this can be a little bit of a tricky one, that, if you don't love it, don't eat it. Sometimes maybe we're not in that situation where we can really do that, or we feel we can't do that. But if you feel that you can and you don't need to eat it, if you don't entirely love it, then don't. But another thing to do is that while eating, check in with yourself and ask yourself, does it still taste good? Am I still enjoying this food? Because as we eat, the desire for that food tends to decrease. So if you've ever noticed, maybe you're eating something and the first few bites taste amazing, they're really good, just the flavors are great. And then as we, kind of come towards the end of the meal, it doesn't really have that same effect anymore. We kind of feel like maybe we're going through just the motion of eating, and it's not really any more enjoyable. So kind of checking in with yourself and seeing how that's going. All right, so feeling your fullness. So this is where we really want to try to ditch the mentality of the clean plate club. So some of us may have grown up in the time or in a family that was definitely like, you have to clean your plate before you get up off the dining table, finish all your food, you get what you get, and then you have to finish it. So we really want to try to avoid that, because again, when we're doing that, we're moving further away from listening to our body. And with intuitive eating, it's all about tuning inwards and listening to what our body needs. So we want to try to practice mindfulness and eat without distractions. So with eating, there's oftentimes a lot of distractions, especially in this day and age. We have the TV, we have our smartphones, we have our laptops. So we're probably always doing something unless we're sitting at the table with our families. So just kind of being mindful of that are you eating with a lot of distractions? Are you even paying attention to what you're eating? And listen to those body signals. So in the same way we were listening to hunger, what that looks like, how do we know when we're full? So finding out what those signals feel like to you. Try to avoid any kind of obligatory eating and feel comfortable saying no, thank you. Again, culturally, this may be a little bit difficult sometimes with, certain family members, but really trying to kind of see when you can use that. Maybe it's about taking something home with you instead of eating it in that, setting, if you feel like you can't eat anymore. Be mindful of air foods. So air foods are foods that might be, very filling in the moment, but they're not something that will keep you full for very long. So if we think about salads, for example, nothing wrong with salads. Salads are great. But if it's all a bunch of vegetables, then that's it. It may fill you up in the moment, but probably 30 minutes later, you're going to be hungry again. And so this is where it's also important to kind of be mindful of balanced combinations. So making sure that you are incorporating some sort of protein and fat and then carbohydrate to help with that satiety and fullness. So back to the hunger and satiety scale, if we're looking again, moving from 5 upwards. So this is where you start to feel hungry, start to feel full, sorry. So you're filling up, but you're not entirely full yet, and you might still be able to eat a little bit more. Going to 7, you're feeling satisfied, you're not stuffed, you're not uncomfortable, but you're happily full. 8 is when we start to eat a little bit more than what we feel comfortable with, And we may notice the stomach distending a little bit, and we start to feel a little uncomfortable. Then 9, I like how they name this Thanksgiving Day full. This is where we maybe ate more than we wanted to, maybe more than we passed our, well, definitely past our fullness cue, and we're feeling really uncomfortable at this point. And then 10 is the binge level fullness. So this is where we're eating large quantities, often in a short amount of time, and we are feeling physically ill. So this is where we can't move, like it hurts and it's just very uncomfortable. So again, maybe now in terms of when you've eaten, how are you feeling in terms of your fullness in this moment? If you ate, did you eat enough? Are you still a little hungry? A little full. And if you haven't eaten yet, yeah, you may not be full. So what we want to try to do is to be around the 3 to 7 range. So this is where we want to, not get hungrier than feeling meal hunger and not being full or past the satisfied feeling. And I want you to kind of think of the hunger satiety scale as a pendulum. So if we think about a pendulum, how it swings from one side to the other, if 1 is on one end and 10 is on the other, if you drop the ball from 1, it is most likely going to swing to 9, 10. If you swing it from 3, chances of it going to 9, 10 are a lot lower, and it's probably going to hit the 6, 7. So this is where, when we go into meals feeling 1, 2, chances of us coming out of the meal 8, 9, 10 are a lot higher. So just also something to keep in mind with that if you're going to a meal feeling comfortable and hungry, chances are you're more in tune with your fullness as well. All right, coping with your emotions with kindness. So as I mentioned earlier, that emotional eating is completely normal, but we don't want it to be the only coping mechanism that we have to these intense emotions. So there's also a continuum of emotional eating. So on one end, we've got sensory gratification, and then on the other end, we've got punishment. So sensory gratification is where we're eating for pleasure. This is what we want to be doing. We want to eat for pleasure, eating what we feel comfortable with, what we enjoy. And then there's also comfort. So sometimes this may be eating when we're thinking maybe it's something our grandmother's made or something that reminds us of certain memories, and that's comforting. Then there's a distraction where we really want to try to avoid feeling those feelings that we're having, and we want to eat to try to avoid thinking about it. Sedation is when we're really numbing out those emotions with food, that we definitely don't want to go into those emotions and think about them. And so we are really, really numbing them out. And then punishment. This is where we're, feeling really low self-esteem and increased self-hatred. And we don't want to get to that extreme with emotional eating. So what are some emotional triggers? So it can be boredom, procrastination. I think boredom is one of the ones typically that I hear quite a bit about. We can also eat when we're experiencing positive emotions. So when we're, excited or in love, or that's definitely, we may find ourselves eating more. If we're frustrated, angry, stressed, anxious, depressed, those can all lead to emotional eating as well. So there are different emotional triggers that might show up and change how you feel in terms of what you want to eat and how much. So how do we cope with our emotions if we're not using food? So again, as I mentioned earlier, that oftentimes the desire to eat comes soon after feeling that emotion, that intense emotion. So check in with yourself. It's always good to check in. So ask yourself, are you hungry? What am I feeling right now? And what do I need in this moment? The one thing I really recommend is try talking to yourself like you would a loved one. The way we talk to ourselves when we are down is, in a way, often we would never talk to anybody else. So try kind of reversing those roles and talk to yourself like you would a loved one. So there are other ways to nurture yourself that doesn't have to be related to food. And so here are some of the ways, like meditating, journaling, going for a walk, spending time with family or friends, doing some hobbies, maybe arts and crafts, playing or listening to music, maybe going for a massage, taking a hot shower, or going outside. So trying to find other ways of coping with emotions that work for you instead of resorting to food if that's something that's an ongoing thing. Again, it's completely okay to do it, but we don't want it to be the only coping mechanism. All right, respecting your body. So this is where we want to quit any kind of body assessment tools. And so the biggest body assessment tool we have is the scale. The scale doesn't really tell us a whole lot of anything. And so we really want to try to stop focusing on that. When we focus on that, again, we are not able to tune into our, hunger and fullness. And we are just going based on numbers on a scale. Quit body checking. So this may be pinching your stomach to see if there's any change there, or checking yourself out in any sort of reflection, whether it be mirrors, store windows, things like that. Try dressing for your size. So I'm sure we've all at some point had those clothes in our closet that, one day we'll fit into, or maybe trying to wear them that, one day they'll feel more comfortable. Well, if we're not wearing clothes that are feeling comfortable, then we are also constantly reminded that we are not the size that we feel we should be. And that's not going to help in terms of tuning inwards and listening to what your body actually needs. Stop body bashing, whether it's your own body or other people's bodies. So being aware of how you talk about your own body or others. Respect body diversity, that we are meant to look different. Even if we all ate the same way, all, worked out the same, we would not look the same. Try to do nice things for your body. So take care of it. And view your body as an instrument, not an ornament. So think about the strengths. What can your body do for you rather than what it looks like only? So movement, feeling the difference. This is where we really want to exercise for enjoyment and not for the goal of weight loss. There's often also this misconception that if I don't sweat, it doesn't count, or if I don't go to the gym, it's not enough. That's not true. So movement can look very different for everybody, and as it should do. So instead of, when you are engaging in any sort of movement, try to focus on how movement feels. How does it improve maybe stress levels? How does it improve your energy levels? How does it improve overall well-being or mental health? What about empowerment? Maybe you just did a Zumba class or something and you feel really strong and proud of yourself. And how is it also helping with sleep? Are you noticing any difference? It's also important to rest when you need it. So a lot of times there's this idea of, I just got to push through it. It's okay. It's not my rest day. If your body is telling you to rest, please rest. We definitely don't want to push it. And it's absolutely okay to take those rest days. And most importantly, find movement that feels good for you and your body. So it can look different for everybody. So it doesn't necessarily have to be the gym. It can be going out for a walk. It can be doing stretches in your, in your house. It can be going to a dance class, anything you want, any movement that you enjoy. All right. And so finally, principle number 10, honoring your health with gentle nutrition. So here we really want to make food choices that honor your health and your taste buds. So not just, we haven't talked a lot about nutrition up until now, but we still do want to make sure that we are getting enough of those nutrients that we need for our body to function optimally, but we don't want it to be the only thing that we're thinking about. And again, we do want it to be enjoyable and tasty and, not just something that we feel we have to eat, but that we actually enjoy eating. So it is important to get a variety, making sure that you're getting enough fruits and vegetables, getting enough grains, and if you can, get whole grains, having protein-rich foods, so also incorporating some fish in there if you like fish, trying to get some nutrient-dense foods, so foods that provide a lot of nutrients, and also getting some quality fats. So we do need to make sure that we are getting all of these in our diet as well. And hydration is also important. So making sure you're getting enough fluids throughout the day, that you're not just having, a glass of water here and there, but that you're having it enough throughout the day. Okay, so that may have been a lot all in once to kind of go through and to to listen to. And sometimes with intuitive eating, because it does seem so different from everything that we've been taught maybe our entire lives, or, we're still hearing. So really just kind of taking a minute, processing it, when you have some time, maybe checking out some of the resources to learn a little bit more. But, so be patient with yourself if it's something that you want to look into more. But what I would say is just focusing on variety. So getting those foods in, getting foods that you enjoy, not limiting yourselves, not restricting yourself. Notice and acknowledge your feelings. This can be challenging. So there may be a lot of emotions that come up, and that's completely normal. But really trying to listen and respect your body. And then I would also say that creating a supportive environment is easy. Not easy, but important. So, some people especially may like to talk about, like, oh, what they ate and what they're not eating and their diets that they're on. And if that's something that you feel is kind of challenging for you, then maybe telling them about it, or, kind of finding the people who are supportive in terms of like what your goals are and things like that. So these are some non-diet dietitians that have some really good social media accounts on Instagram. So I would definitely, if it's something that you want to look into more, have a look at some of these and see if there's somebody, maybe one or a few of them that speak to you. And also checking out a couple of podcasts. So there's the Christy Harrison actually has podcasts on intuitive eating, and Evelyn Tribole, who was one of the creators of intuitive eating, she also has a podcast with Dan Harris on 10% Happier. So that's also a really good one to check out. All right, so just in terms of, now we're almost out of time, but so just this is something that I would recommend you look at or kind of try to reflect on in terms of just briefly reviewing the 10 principles of intuitive eating. And you'll all receive a little handout of just a brief summary of the 10 principles, as well as the hunger and satiety scale, so that you can use to check in with yourself. But I'd like you to look at them and kind of determine which of these principles you feel that you've already got, a good grasp on. Like, what are some of these things that you're already doing or implementing? And then finding one or a few that you feel that this might be a little bit of a challenge, but something I'd like to work on. And then, taking it one at a time. Intuitive eating doesn't have to look perfect. There's no right or wrong way to do it. And you don't need to do it in order. So there may be some things that you feel like are, in a sense, easier to tackle, and that's absolutely fine starting there. So yeah, it's not no right or wrong way. All right, so let's move into the questions part. Okay. Let's see. Okay, so we have a question about how do I determine my appropriate weight? Is it BMI or is it or other scales? So this is something that it's very difficult to know. So we do not know our appropriate weights. It's the weight that we feel we function optimally at. And I know this is probably not an answer everybody wants to hear, but BMI is not an accurate way of determining weight, unfortunately. And that's something that the medical or healthcare relies kind of heavily on still. And it's something that fortunately the Health at Every Size movement is kind of moving towards working on, so that if there's anything in terms of, we don't need to fit into that BMI category, but it's more about finding what weight works for you. Weight is not an indicator of health. And so that's one of the biggest things that, especially with medical professionals, that we're really trying to work on, that not everything is weight related. So, if you're going into something and you're not feeling well, it's not automatically because of your weight. So I would say if weight loss is one of your goals, I would just, finding that weight that you feel comfortable in, you feel your best at, feeling comfortable in your clothes and things like that, instead of looking at scales and BMI. All right. Sorry, I'm trying to navigate the. Okay. All right, sorry, I'm just trying to scroll through. Okay, so in terms of, there are a few questions about diabetes or chronic illness and how to follow intuitive eating, things like that. So yes, there may be certain things that, in terms of like if it's type 2 diabetes, certain things that you have to watch out for, or maybe trying to incorporate more of, maybe you're eating more whole grains than more processed, foods and things like that. So absolutely, there are going to be some of the things that, you will need to probably follow medically, but there are still ways to eat some of the foods that you enjoy. So it can be challenging, but this is where I would recommend, unfortunately, doctors are not always very nutritionally educated. So I would say even talking to a dietitian and seeing how you could work on some of these things. If you are interested in working with a dietitian, there is, you can look at healthprofs.com, and I don't remember the entire link to it, but you can find dietitians and look through and see. Some of them might say that they are non-diet approach and also HAES informed, so the health at every size. And then they will be doing a lot of like the intuitive eating work as well. So not focusing on like diet and weight loss, but looking more about like overall well-being. And they would be the ones I would say, that could help with that. Okay, so there's one question about giving an example of eating intuitively. And so actually I forgot to mention this, that if we think about children are very intuitive eaters. So we are actually all born intuitive eaters, but with all of the diet culture noise that comes with, growing up, we tend to move away from that. So then we're taught things that we should or shouldn't be eating, and we don't anymore listen to what we actually feel like eating. If you, if you look at a child, a toddler, try telling them not to eat at 11 o'clock because it's not lunchtime yet. They will definitely want to eat, and they will stop when they're full. And so it's about allowing ourselves to trust our bodies in terms of knowing what we need to eat and what we want to eat. So it's, again, because it's so different and moving so far away from diet culture and a lot of the messages that we've been getting for many, many years. And so, but yeah, trying to kind of remember that like intuitive eating is listening to your body. Okay. So I know we're a couple of minutes, got a couple more minutes, and we have quite a few questions. So I will try to get to a few more right now, but if I don't get to your question and you've put it in there, I will answer via email. So so here's a really interesting question. So someone was recently told that overeating is an addiction, and that often when you get rid of one addiction, you replace it with another. So I hear this, I've heard this quite a few times, that, I feel like I'm addicted to sugar. I feel like I'm addicted to food. I would say that the chances of that are typically a lot lower than we think. So it is most likely that you're, again, not knowing this exact situation right now, but most of the situations that I've seen, actually all of them that I've, heard this from, they're not addicted to food. It's more of that you have been either told that you shouldn't eat certain foods, or you're not allowing yourself to eat certain foods and you're restricting them. And then you're feeling out of control and feeling that all you can think about is that food. And then you're maybe not eating that food, so there's just kind of this obsession with food. The other thing too to note is that if we are having a craving, so for example, if we're wanting to have like a donut, but we're like, no, we shouldn't have that donut because it's not good for you, we should eat something else. If we replace that with something else, if I try to have a cheese sandwich because I think that's better, it's not going to take the place of the donut. So then I'm still going to feel hungry. I'm still going to want that donut. I'm still going to feel like that desire has not been met. That craving was not met. So then I might eat something else. And it continues until I actually give into that craving. So in a sense, have what you're craving. eat the foods that you want to eat, and you will feel a lot more satisfied with food. If it's something that you're still experiencing and you still feel like you're addicted to food, I would say that, again, trying to talk to a dietitian versus a doctor about it, and see that what their thoughts about that are. Okay. Okay, let's do one more because I know we're at the end right now. All right, so does menopause change any of this? I feel I'm hungry all the time and I didn't used to be. So yes, a lot of factors can come into play. Hormones definitely is one of them. And also as we age, that we are, our requirements change, our metabolism changes. So a lot of things come into play there in terms of how we're feeling with food, and how we feel like we should, what we're eating. So yes, it might be that as well. But I would say that trying to, again, enjoy the foods. There's lots of good foods out there. So if you're hungry, trying to eat the foods that you want. And again, maybe it is also that you're restricting something. So kind of paying attention to that in case it is. All right, well, I think I will respond to the rest via email as we are out of time. So, Jen, maybe.
Sure. Thank you so much. This was very informative. Took a lot of notes. We will definitely follow up with everybody with the handouts that were talked about during the webinar. So we'll send those along, and other details about some of the Instagram accounts to follow and podcast, etc. So just want to say thank you everyone for viewing this, and hope that you check out the website for some other upcoming events. So thank you so much. This was great.
Thank you.